So without further ado, let me pass over to Amir, and Amir is going to take us back over the last 3 to 4 months of the COVID-19 traveller sentiment research, and also look ahead on what are the prospects for the rest of the summer and into the autumn or fall in the US in terms of how a US traveller is thinking about their travel plans. So over to you, Amir.
Thank you, Chris. Well, hello again, everyone. Great to be back. So we've been doing this for about 3.5 months now, and thank you again to our friends at Miles Partnership for helping sponsor this ongoing study of American travel sentiment. With their partnership, we've been able to make this available to the entire industry and keep the study going. So thank you again. Let's take a look about what we see what we've learned over the last 14 weeks, and maybe think ahead a little bit too. So without further ado, just a quick reminder for those of you who haven't seen this before. Every week we go to our panel and sample 1,000 adults 18 and over, representative sample of the United States of American travelers, and ask them about 10 or 11 questions about their sentiment towards travel. So here come the numbers. With this past week, this was just fielded last week, every other Wednesday and Thursday. We started off weekly. Now we felt it was the time to move it to a bi-weekly study. So this reflects from the past 2 weeks here. 69% of travelers who indicated travel in the next 6 months to us are changing or have changed their travel plans in some form or fashion. How does that break out? About 45% have reduced their travel plans in some form or fashion. Typically, could be just a shortening of a trip and so forth. 37%, you can see just over a third, have canceled their trip completely. But that's not as bad news as you think. 29% have changed their destination to one they can drive versus a flying long-haul destination. And of course, as there's still no clarity about when the borders for international non-essential travel may reopen again, a lot of folks have been postponing their travels to Europe or elsewhere abroad for this summer or perhaps early fall, are changing those plans to domestic trips. They are getting away, but it's going to do it domestically. So the beauty of doing this for 3.5 months, Chris, as you and I know, is we get some great trend lines. We can see where how the journey has been. As you can see, we kind of peaked back in April 8th with 85% of travelers telling us they're changing their plans. Now we're back down to 69%, and we've kind of been there for the last 3 weeks. As you can see, this is going to be a pattern that's just started to emerge right now, which is the key sentiment indicators that we've been tracking have been generally trending in a very positive direction over the last month and a half or so, but now they're starting to flatten. And a lot of that is being caused primarily because of a lot of reports of at least 25 states as of this morning reporting over the past 2 weeks surges or spikes in the number of new cases of COVID-19, so forth. That is having an effect on the traveler psyche. So watch for this pattern just a little bit. I did tell you that about a month and a half ago, we started seeing the shift that the volume of people canceling their trips altogether has been eclipsed by the volume of people that have just simply reduced their travel plans, changed their, postponed or reduced the length of their trip. And as you can see, over the last 2 weeks, that gap has really grown between cancellations and changing plans. That's really, really encouraging to see. It's talking about that pent-up demand starting to be released. People are deciding, yep, I'm going. And that's a really encouraging thing for us. The Great American Road Trip. It never went away. It's been back, and now as we begin to reopen, it reopens with gusto. As you can see, people are changing from flying destinations to driving destinations. It's been a very, very strong constant from the beginning. And every week, if you've been following along, you know that we ask American travelers about 3 key factors that could greatly influence their decision to travel in the next 6 months. Transportation costs remains pretty negligible, 17% saying it would greatly impact. Similar numbers on the economy, concerns about the pocketbook, and of course, no surprise, fear of coronavirus remains top, but that number is less than 50% now. As you can see, we peaked with 2/3 of Americans on April 1st telling us that was going to greatly impact. Now we're down to just below half, but that's still almost half, so we have a ways to go still. The concern about the economy, again, it's been low. I'm happy to report that's the first indicator that's actually returned back to the same level that we were on March 11th when we started this survey. So that's positive. Again, if you're changing to road travel, if you're shortening the length of the trip, you're doing a lot of things that typically lower the cost of the travel to begin with. And of course, that combined with the fear of coronavirus, it's not about can I afford to travel this summer? It's about when am I going to travel and how am I going to travel this summer? So that's what we're seeing there. And of course, the $64,000 question we ask every week, are you going to be traveling in the next 6 months? And almost 3/4 of Americans say, yes, I am. And you can see that numbers, even through the worst parts of the crisis so far, has remained very strong. Again, encouraging. Every week, we also kind of take one question, we leave one of those questions to change around and take a look at key factors we want to dig a little deeper into. This week, we decided to take a look at health and safety factors that are going to be important to travelers when they're considering where they're going to go and what they're going to do there. Very, very clear here. You can see it's about making sure that you are communicating to those travelers what your plan is. How are you keeping them and your employees safe? They want to know what to expect, how you're going to provide a safe and clean and risk-free environment as possible for them, how you're going to mitigate that risk for them. Also, they expect you to wear those and use those PPEs. They want to hear that you're testing your employees or taking their temperatures before they show up for work. And of course, that all the social distancing best practices and so forth are being followed. You see all those ranked very, very high in terms of importance. And for the last month and a half, we have been tracking the perceptions of safety of travel. We're talking to these folks not just as travelers, but as visitors also. And you can see we remain very much a divided country in terms of support for opening up and welcoming new visitors back into our community. One's personal feelings of safety towards traveling outside their own community, and even their own personal feelings of safety in local dining and retail opportunities. How does this stack up? Well, you can see over the last couple of weeks, coinciding with those news reports of the surges and so forth, we saw a slight dip, about 5 points in support for opening up the community to visitors. So again, those destinations that are doing safe pledges and things like that, it's really important to communicate to your local stakeholders about these items. Of course, of feeling safe traveling outside the community. Remember, this is a survey of traveling Americans, and only 46% are telling us that they are feeling safe. They agree or strongly agree that they are feeling safe to travel outside their community. We haven't crossed that 50% threshold yet. So remember, we have a long way to go. And at least in a positive indicator trending upwards, we do see these folks feeling a little bit more safe dining and shopping in the local communities. Of course, in many states, it's now been open very recently or for the past month. So people are dipping their toe in the water, and of course, as they dip in the toe in the water, they start easing back into a bit of a comfort level with it. All right, again, 3.5 months worth of data. We saw a lot of things. Several things have been constant throughout. The first one is that the recovery, just like reopening, is beginning at home. People dip the toe in the water local, and then they start heading out regional. So the regional drive markets that need to be focused on first and foremost. I know this isn't brain surgery, but it just needs to be reinforced. Don't abandon your longer home market strategies, but you're going to have to delay or alter them. The first dollars to be made are really closer to home. Secondly, never forget, this is a health issue. You cannot discount your way into recovery. We've seen data earlier throughout the last couple months showing us time and time again that deals, discounts, and so forth, the consumer telling us they're nice to have. They want to find out information about where they can get a good deal, but that doesn't factor in heavily to whether or not they decide to go. You saw the economic pocketbook concerns. They're minimal. If you're giving away rate, you're giving away rate in most cases when you don't have to. And as we all know, if you give away a lot of rate, when things get better, it takes a long time to get that rate back. The fear factor is real, folks. You saw that time and time again, that hesitancy. Again, only 46% are telling us, of travelers telling us that they feel safe going outside their community. Again, it's a health issue. As we've seen the flattening on certain key indicators, you know, it coincides exactly with the reports on what the media is telling us and the official health officials are telling us about the pandemic right now. So that's going to be the number one thing that sways folks' decision. So again, you've heard, if you followed along every week when Chris and I do our short little videos, this ball of pent-up demand continues to run right into this wall of fear. But the good news is some folks are climbing over that wall. They're going. That demand is starting to release, slowly but surely, but it's starting to release. And all this means that engagement has never been important than right now. And I'm not just talking about engaging with your visitors and telling them what to expect when they get here to your place of business. It's also your partners in your local business community and getting them all on board the same message, like those pledges and so forth. But most importantly, it is the resident. Please, 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 please keep the resident informed of the expectations you're putting on the visitors. Let them know how you're doing this, how you plan to interact and transact in a way to help keep this community safe, not just from a revenue perspective there. So that is my story. I'm sticking to it. And Chris, all yours, buddy.
Thank you so much. And I'd emphasize again that whole locals importance, Amir. I think until we can convince locals that it's safe to get out and about in their community, and particularly with the rise in case numbers in some of those potential visitor markets you want to target, it's going to be very challenging. And of course, you need your locals on side to make sure that when it's right, that it's a welcoming, conducive environment that supports visitors.